I am absolutely honored to be here with all of the physicians and all the other people who've come out to take the time to let our voices be heard. But before I speak to each of you, I would like to speak directly to somebody else. Mr. President, over the last several months, the American people have heard a lot of rhetoric suggesting that our healthcare system is somehow inferior to other nations. Tales of high infant mortality, tales of routine denial of care, and poorer healthcare outcomes than other nations have been commonplace. Doctors have been accused of actually mutilating their patients for financial gain. President Obama, shame on you. The truth is that we have the greatest healthcare system in the world. We have better outcomes. We have better access to care. We have better technology. Our U.S. hospitals conduct more clinical trials than any other country in the entire world. We do have the greatest healthcare. We do have the greatest technology. We have the most modern equipment. People from all over the world come to the United States to train. People from all corners of the globe come here to receive their medical care. And despite all these facts, we have a very real possibility of having our healthcare system destroyed. Limitations to specialists and possible wait times in emergency rooms. This is our future. Patient care will no longer be between a patient and a doctor, but will be dictated by a faceless, unaccountable bureaucrat in Washington. Like you, I believe it was my calling in life to become a physician, and when I was fairly young, I decided that I wanted to go into medicine. I started college at the University of California, Berkeley in 1984, and I can remember one day, after long hours of study, looking out the plate glass window of the science building at the rest of the campus getting ready for the weekend, and I had to turn back to my Bunsen burner for another 4 hours of science lab. I often thought how nice it would be to take easier classes, but that was not my destiny. I wanted to be a doctor. As I passed through the years of intensive study, I eventually graduated and was admitted to medical school in 1992. I was so excited to drink from the fountain of knowledge. When I arrived, they stuck a fire hose in my mouth, turned it on, and told me not to spill a drop. I remember those classes: anatomy, biochemistry, physiology, neuroscience, microbiology, embryology, pathology, nutrition, death and dying, medical ethics, just to name a few. There was so much to learn, so much to understand, and after 2 years of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. classes, 4 to 8 hours of studying every night, countless hours in the labs, we were ready to pass into the second year. We took a 2-day board exam, and this was a doorway into our clinical years, where we began to interact with patients, and we began to transform ourselves from scientists into healers. The pace of study remained intense, and I can remember one 3-month period during general surgery when I literally never saw the light of day. Our shifts ended after midnight, and we had to be back at rounds at 4 a.m. the next day. But even though it was brutal, I was learning and experiencing so much, not just about science, but just about what it took to make people whole. For me, this was a humbling time. I worked with so many different people, so many different medical conditions. I saw so much human suffering and so much faith. There were times I was brought to tears by my patients' suffering. There were other times when I rejoiced with tears of joy in the salvation of others. Each experience allowed me to grow as a physician and as a person. And finally, the end of medical school arrived, and that was really the beginning of my journey as a physician. Orthopedic residency started for me in 1996. I was 31 years old. I made $27,000 a year. I was working 100 to 120 hours a week. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I was thriving. On-the-job training, taking care of patients on the floors, in the operating rooms, at the trauma center, in the emergency rooms, and clinics furthered my knowledge and my understanding. I fondly look back on those post-call days when I had been up for at least 36 hours. On my way home, I used to put my car in park because I was afraid if I fell asleep, I would nudge the car in front of me. I can remember my wife coming out to the garage and waking me up in the front seat of my car because I had pulled into the garage, but I had fallen asleep. For some reason, at the end of my 5 years of residency, I wanted another year of training called fellowship, and so I did that. Sometimes I wonder how many patients I treated before I started practice. Thousands. And that story is all of your stories too. And it never ends. We continue to study, we continue to learn, we continue to evolve as healers. As our experience grows, so does our responsibility. We rarely go to sleep without worrying about some of our patients. All that time while seeing thousands of patients, our skills and our knowledge improved. Our ability to be more than scientists evolved until one day each of us became a healer. All of us understand the physical nature of disease, but those are just the basics. We are counselors, we are cheerleaders, we are educators, and we are friends. Each of us has had many meaningful encounters with our patients over the years, and trying to select any one of those to convey our journey is impossible. But I can remember seeing one 11-year-old girl whose legs had become mummified due to meningococemia. And as I examined her, she looked up at me and she asked me if her legs were going to be okay. I was without words. I had nothing to say to her, and so I sat down on the bed next to her, I held her hand, and we watched TV. And for some reason, that seemed to bring comfort to her. I can recall caring for a 3-year-old boy who had never seen the outside of a hospital. He had short gut syndrome, and even though my partner and I, after an all-night on-call session, were so tired we couldn't see straight, we sat on the floor and we played blocks with him. I can remember one Sunday morning holding a mother who had lost her daughter in a car accident the night before. The sounds of her agony that night will be with me for the rest of my life. And each of us out there has those stories. We have those memories. Being a physician is much more than understanding physiology. It requires an understanding of the human condition. I watched my 20s and 30s disappear while immersed in learning my craft. I accrued $300,000 in debt, and when I finished my training, I was in my mid-30s. I had no savings, no college fund for my children, no 401k, and despite this, I was one of the luckiest people on the face of the earth because I had earned the privilege to become a healer. Medicine is not a cookbook endeavor, it's an art, and each of us is still learning. It's been suggested that physicians would rather amputate a limb or remove tonsils unnecessarily for financial gain. Some believe that we make ridiculous sums of money to perform these procedures. Some believe that we are driven by financial considerations. The reality is that these views demonstrate a tremendous lack of understanding of the practice of medicine, and more importantly, a lack of understanding of what it means to be a physician, to be a healer. In all of our training, in our thousands of hours of study, thousands of patients, the most important lesson we learned was to examine your patient, to lay our hands on the patient, to touch the patient. And yet we're being told that a government bureaucrat is going to tell us whether we need to give the red pill or the blue pill. It's ludicrous to think that some faceless bureaucrat, unaccountable health commissioner in Washington will know our patients better than we know our patients. It's ludicrous to think that a government bureaucrat can appreciate the unique qualities of each individual patient. There are no cookie-cutter solutions in medicine. Each patient is unique. Government-run healthcare is not the answer. We need real reform, the ability to purchase insurance across state lines. Tax deductions for individuals to purchase insurance, not just employers. Universal health care tax credit. Limitation on state mandates. Enable small businesses to avail themselves of ERISA. High-risk pools, health savings accounts, tort reform, just to name a few. Each one of us took a sacred oath to first do no harm. Government takeover of healthcare, whether it is cloaked in a public option, a trigger for a public option, a government subsidized co-op, we know is not the answer. We must stand up for our patients. We must speak for their well-being. And I, for one, cannot participate in a government-run healthcare program because I took a sacred oath to first do no harm.